Again. Okay, so I think everyone, we are live. We'll see if that's really true here in a second. Okay, the little live symbol just popped up. Looks like we may have achieved livedom.
Good.
Life, achieved life. Yeah, this has been a crazy weekend at the Creative Contessa, as you noted. We've had
Pandemic. What? I'm not trying to make a call. I don't.
Okay. Can you hear me?
okay. Should be back. Am I back?
Good. Yeah,
Yes. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, yeah, so it's been a crazy weekend at the Creative Contessa. Um, I and then that comment I sent you about the very educated gentleman accusing me of rewriting history by reading primary sources and not
Uh,
and
which
carefully interpreting rather than just believing anything that a chronicler tells me. Turns out that wasn't the medieval hygiene video. That was the video on not trusting the histories of the martyrs. He accused me of gaslighting people by suggesting we shouldn't just take posthumously written chronicles or seriously post era written chronicles seriously. The ones that talk about the crazy flayings and the cookings and the super,
Off of breasts and all those really horrible things they supposedly did to the early Christian martyrs. So apparently it's how dare any historian suggest that that's not 100% true. Goodness gracious, people. Okay. Good evening, Michelle. How are you this evening? Nice to see you. Yeah, from Central California. Springtime. Wait, Central California. So are you still awake or awake again? You were. Thank you for joining us, Michelle. So, everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Frock Flicks, where we basically will be working on projects and complaining about whatever horrible thing the entertainment industry has sent our way. And I'm afraid the one we're going to be talking about this evening is not a Hollywood production. I was seriously disappointed when I realized this was a BBC production. Did you notice that? So we're going to be talking about King and Conqueror, which is supposedly a faithful redramatization of the conquest of England by William the Bastard of Normandy, right?
you know,
But if you hadn't told me that this was, if I didn't know that this were supposedly about William the Conqueror, the stills would not have given me any hint of this being about Normans versus Anglo-Saxons and or Norwegians in 1066. Not a single thing about it says clothing or armor 1066.
I would also like to add.
Yeah, did you you said you took a look at the costumes from it, and what was your initial impression, Mason?
The trailer is, dare I say it, worse than
Mason, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, hold on a minute. Hold on.
Okay. Okay, I should be able to hear you again.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
But
Yeah.
the trailer, I watched the trailer and I looked at the images and I want 56 seconds of my life back. Like, that was terrible. Like, I not long before we started, actually, when I first woke up, I watched a thing. It was this guy and he was talking about like some of the costumes. And it was just, oh my god. And they didn't even try for, like, any of the women's costumes.
No.
Didn't. At least with most of the men, there was at least some attempt to make it look somewhat, like, historical. And then the women, it's just like they threw whatever they found in, like, an old storage closet on them. Like,
Well, I mean, the men were just as terrible, actually. I mean, honestly, in my opinion, like, first off, once again, brown, gray,
Yeah.
tan, lots of black. Black was not a common color in the 11th century because black was incredibly expensive to dye. Very few people were wearing black in the 11th century. Not warriors, not ladies, not kings, not the members of the Dominican or I think it's the Dominican order. There were certain monastic orders that wore black, but they weren't wearing things that were dyed black necessarily. They were wearing rough woolen garments spun or woven from black and brown sheep. So, black just was not a common color. Colors were a common color in the 11th century. People wanted to wear color. And a man like William of Normandy, Duke of Normandy, one of the most powerful duchies in the 11th century, he had riches. He was wealthy. I mean, super wealthy. I was listening to a lecture about Matilda of Flanders this morning that pointed out that she and her Matilda is Duchess Matilda, his wife, that she and he endowed this massive abbey as a gift to their daughter Cecile. And they endowed it with all sorts of riches and resources so that she would, when she grew up, she would become the second abbess and she would be in control of this vastly wealthy institution, basically. So they had resources of a financial sort out the wazoo. So for them to be wearing tan and brown and shapeless and no embroidery, no proper layers, it's insulting actually to their memories, honestly. Okay, let's just say good morning. Good morning, Big Racer. Adrian Clerks, thank you for joining us. Yeah, it's been an interesting weekend. It's been a very interesting weekend. It's cherry blossom season here finally in Korea, so that's fantastic. And the blossoms just started blooming in earnest yesterday, so that means we probably have about 2 weeks of pretty lightly pink petalage all over the peninsula. So that just sort of that underscores the disgustingness of the clothing in King and Conqueror. Also, they're all wearing leather armor. No, just no. If, and you know what's frustrating, Mason? If you wanted to recreate clothing from the conquest of England, what is the primary visual source you would probably go to for that? Whether it's armor, clothing, the way the ships looked, the way the feast tables were set, what visual source should anyone go to first about? Yeah, the Bayeux Tapestry. The Bayeux Tapestry is literally an illustrated retelling of the entire conquest from the prequel to the final coronation, right? And it depicts all walks of people. It depicts servants, it depicts members of the court, it depicts men at arms, it depicts knights, it depicts lords, it depicts, the various kings and pretenders who are vying for the English throne in that era. It shows how horses were tacked. It shows the soldiers are all wearing mail hauberks. They're not wearing freaking leather armor. It is so frustrating to see all these men in Ren Fair armor. Like it looks like, it's an insult to 11th century men at arms, honestly. Yeah. Yeah. Has Haley's Comet on it too. Good point, Big Racer. Haley's Comet and labeled, in fact, it's a beautiful depiction of Haley's Comet, like probably maybe the only embroidered representation from history. But it feels like whoever advised the BBC on this production couldn't be bothered. They decided they weren't going to look at a single actual historical pictorial reference from the 11th century. I was and the hair and the facial hair. What WTF? I just don't get it.
They don't give William a helmet, as far as I've seen. They give him a just terrible attempt at a male coif.
They do.
And Harold, they don't. I don't know the proper term, but the nose, like the piece covers your nose on the helmet.
Oh, the nasal. The nasal.
Thank you. They don't have that for him. They have this, just on his head. It's just.
Not it.
And the shield, everything about it is just so terrible.
The weird lions on the shields. Like heraldry isn't really a thing yet in 1066. Not like that anyway. It looks like something out of medieval times. Those shields, honestly. Yeah. I mean, it's if honestly, I thought it was a Hollywood, or I thought it was a, I don't know, a some television production by some other producer, American, honestly, based on the lack of authenticity about anything in this production. So I was real disappointed to find out it was the BBC. Yeah, Villa Vendetta comments they don't really have money nowadays to pay for loads of new stuff. They're recycling a lot. It's just, yeah. I mean, that may be, but maybe then don't do a production you can't actually afford to do properly. I, these women are wearing clothes that look like they fell out of a random Ren fair somewhere in the U.S. instead of out of any historical production. Surely they could raid their old. Maybe they still have costumes from productions they've done set in the 11th century that they could reuse rather than this stuff. Yeah, I just, again, it perpetuates the myth of the dark Middle Ages, of the dirty Middle Ages, of the colorless, drab Middle Ages. Those, yeah, super disappointing to me. I do not recommend that you watch, and I couldn't get past the clothing to see what bad things they've done to the history.
If I'm not mistaken, it's 10 years smushed in like 8 episodes.
Right. Michelle says they could have changed it to the same story on a different planet, right? Or made it just a fantasy. Yeah, like Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones is a fantasy retelling of the War of the Roses. And yet the original Game of Thrones series was more faithful to actual medieval silhouettes and colors than most historical productions have been lately, which is really sad. Yeah. Question: what century are you guys dressed in? Okay, Mason, tell us about your century, please. Let me show a bigger picture of you.
Angle my camera down a little bit. So I am currently in about 16th century Englishman's attire. Now, I typically do Henry VIII, so this is essentially part of the layers of Henry VIII. This is not the full outfit, of course, but I didn't want to put on the full outfit at the moment. So currently I am a 16th century, most like really Henry VIII, but 16th century, about 1540s-ish. Sometime 1540s is where I would pinpoint this specifically.
Do you have your hat, any of your caps on hand to just doff to demonstrate?
I can go get my hats if you'd like.
Yeah, go grab some headgear, sir. Yeah. So for those just joining, welcome to our Frock Flicks live stream. We are talking about King and Conquer today, and also if you have any questions about, you have any movies or television productions that you would like, on which you would like us to comment in terms of historical fashion, please feel free to do so. My knowledge of fashion history is fairly wide-ranging, so I have lots of opinions about a lot of different productions. And we're also going to be working on projects. I'm actually repairing the sleeve of a green striped kota that looks very much like this one. The stitches just came out, so I just have to reattach the sleeve. And then I will be doing some finger loop braiding. Okay, let's see your hat. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Stretch out a little bit.
So yeah, this is the sort of hat, one of the kinds of hats. There are several different styles. There's also different layering, right? So, there's the option of, have you ever done the coif, the really nice coif topped with the flat cap? Either.
I have my coif with me now, actually.
There's actually I think it's a portrait of Henry when he was a baby.
I think
when wearing a very cute coif. Henry VIII when he was a baby, wearing a very cute coif.
I believe that one was Edward, or at least it's usually attributed to Edward.
Or you're talking? Yes, right. It was his son Edward. He's a cutie.
Or he's basically the same style I've got on right now going on, where he's got the koi thing, he's got his flat cap.
Excellent. Okay, now as for my part, switching the screens around. Great. Oh, okay. And I know Ryan already said it, but I'll say it again. I am dressed in 1480s-ish Florentine. This dress would be at home in the 1470s to be 1490s. No one would have looked askance at this, but this is Florentine. This is called a cotta, and it is basically, this is actually just the first 2 layers. If I were to leave my home, I would have to put on at least 1 more layer, if not 2 more layers. And on this channel, I actually, on the Creative Contessa, I have multiple getting dressed videos of getting dressed in 1480s Florentine clothing. One of them is narrated with lots of details about historical layers of clothing. So if you want to see how this all goes on, how the hair should be properly and formally done, right now I've just got a kerchief on with my hair kind of tossed in braids to sort of hide my accessory, and learn more about the clothing and fashion and culture of Florence in the second half of the 15th century. You can check out that video. Fantastic. Yeah. So some people have asked me, Mason, how often do you dress like that do you ever dress like that on a daily basis? Do you ever attend classes attired thusly, or is this mostly just something you do in your free time?
This is mostly, I wear this at home mostly because sometimes, now in the summertime, I do like to go, when I'm off in the summertime, I like to go out, walk around, just do different stuff while in the full attire. Because it's, it's just nice to do. It's comfortable, really. No, I like wearing modern clothing, obviously, but this is a lot more comfortable than most people would tend to think. But I do wear this a lot in the summertime, especially out around.
Well, I think by the 16th century, clothes are starting to take on for men rather, are starting to take on a more familiar feel to modern clothing. Obviously, we still haven't reached what I call the soulless slacks and shirt era, but trunkhosen are getting closer to being what trousers are now. A doublet is getting closer to the kind of top that men are wearing now versus, say, in the 15th century, when you've got super fitted hosen laced into a very tightly fitted doublet that may shape your body, which is then topped by a robe that drags on the ground. Most modern men wouldn't find that very comfortable, unless they, just like wearing lots of long garments. I wear this kind of clothing on a regular basis because I'm too lazy to change. Once I'm out and about, once I'm dressed, that's it. I'm not changing clothes again. So I go outside. In fact, I took a walk this evening dressed like this to go pick some cherry blossoms to go on top of the torta bianca that I made earlier in my medieval cooking party as garnish. And the Koreans love it. Koreans love to see me dressed like this. They want to have their pictures taken with me. The little girls cry out "princess" in Korean. They love the colors, they love the shape. So it's nice to be admired instead of viewed with skepticism and maybe even disdain, which that would have been the case when I was wearing these kinds of clothes in public 30 years ago. But the attitudes have changed, so that's really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah. A comment is, I wish people dressed this decadently more casually now. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Decadent casual wear for the win. It's really funny to think, if you think about it, Mason, the clothes that men generally wear now, the shirts that people wear as outerwear were underwear for literally centuries. You would not be seen in just that shirt unless you are working in the fields or doing carpentry or making pottery or some other dirty work, or maybe engaged, I guess, in a duel that's illegal of some sort, maybe. But that shirt has now become the button-down shirt that was the undershirt for a long time, has now become, for most men, the topmost layer and the only layer, in fact. It's a sad development. But these clothes actually aren't that inconvenient to wear. They really aren't. Driving is a bit of a challenge if you drive a car in something with skirts like this because the skirts are super full and they may bind around your feet around the pedals. That's maybe not the most fun thing to do, but if you live in a place with good public transit, that isn't a problem. Yeah, Hanbok. Yep. I do, for those just joining. Oh, we have, let me see. Megwai Sagu one. I am working actually on Hanbok, and if you're interested in learning about historical Korean fashion, in about 13 and a half hours, I'm just doing so many live streams this weekend. In about 13 and a half hours, I'm going to be doing a live stream talking about 16th century Korean fashion. Specifically, I've been to 2 museums now here in Korea, and I've actually held those garments, 500-year-old garments, in my hands and examined them firsthand to see how they were constructed. And I have learned so much about how garments were put together in 16th century Korea. And so tomorrow I'm going to be talking about some of those learnings, showing some pictures that I took at the museums of these garments that were basically worn by women who died 500 years ago. So if anyone is interested in learning more details about historical Korean clothing, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Seoul time, and whatever time that is for the rest of the world. Yeah, Hanbok is really awesome. Yeah. So King and Conqueror. Have any of you out there seen King and Conqueror by any chance? It's based on the way the sets they were showing, which again, all of the interior spaces are dark and depressing, instead of being colorful. The great halls, like these are supposed to be great halls of palaces, and instead of having walls that are painted in beautiful frescoes, in this era it would probably be more like geometric patterns of some kind. Again, they're all dark. They're all ill illuminated. Even in the middle of the day, somehow they're dark. And there's no wall hangings, there's no bankers, which are the cloth coverings that would be put on benches, basically the precursor of modern style upholstery. It's just the whole idea of presenting this as literally a dark age. It gets very tiresome very quickly for me. Yeah. What about you? What about you, Mason? Are you tired of the whole dark ages expressed literally?
I very much am.
Okay, let's see. Did you say King and Conquer? In case we want to watch, I did say King and Conquer. If you want to watch, I'm just going to warn you: you're not getting any of your life back. You can't rewind. You just can't rewind. I stopped watching normal TV, so I miss a lot of BB stuff. But I'm not paying for a TV license. No, someone suggested that I should watch King and Conquer, and these days, before I devote any of my life to watching something, I always go and take a look at all the stills, as many stills as I can. And every single still I saw from this show made me want to throw up in my mouth. It was terrible. Again, this is one of the most visually well chronicled conquests in the history of the world, possibly, thanks to the Bayeux Tapestry, which was created more or less just after the event. So it's, the people, the way the people are depicted is very likely to be the way things actually were in 1066. But it seems like they either didn't have the budget or they couldn't be bothered to do anything like it actually should have been. So, yeah. Question, where are you from? Mason, where are you from?
I am Canadian. I live in Newfoundland, so I'm sure most of you have heard of that in a way that is not pronounced properly. Because
yeah.
No one pronounces it the way it's pronounced. But I am Canadian.
Yeah, everyone wants to pronounce it Newfoundland.
Newfoundland.
Yeah. I know, it's terrible. I cringe every time I hear it. Yeah. Well, I'm from the United States. I'm from a small state called Delaware. I grew up there, but I immigrated to Germany when I was 22. more or less, and lived there for 12 years. And then I moved to Korea, and then we moved back to the US. And then I spent more time in Korea. Then we moved back to the US. Then I spent the last bunch of years living as a digital nomad with a lot of my time in Korea. So I more like a citizen of the world. And the question of where are you from can be kind of complicated to answer. Where am I now? I'm currently in Daegu, South Korea. So all over the world. Why would you have to pay for a TV license when you have the internet? I guess there's that. If one is familiar with the right skill set and or the right websites, one can find almost anything without having to pay for a license. Yeah, I would be pretty frustrated if I had paid to watch this show, though. The weird Met Gallery or the weird Met Gala cloak that Queen Emma is wearing in one. I don't know if you saw that. It's this red monstrosity that looks like it looks like something you would expect her to step forward and say, "Tonight I'm wearing Chanel on my feet and Gucci on my body." Right? Like that's how terribly modern it looked. Nothing like no cloak from the 11th century. That's for certain. And she's all in red, like all in red. Everything is red. Just her whole outfit is red, 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 which is also not a documentable way of dressing or layering clothing in the 11th century. He was even wearing red gloves, weirdly. Yeah, so King and Conqueror definitely gets a 0 out of 5 stars, would not recommend from a historical clothing or armor perspective, for that matter, or hairstyles or facial hair. None of it is authentic to 1066 or anywhere roughly around that time. So it's disappointing because up until I saw King and Conqueror, I usually would say things like, well, you can't really trust Hollywood movies for authentic clothing, but BBC productions are pretty good. That's not the case anymore, unfortunately. Can't take it for granted.
We need to stop basing movies off a historical event if we don't want to make it like the historical event. Because if this was like some fantasy like thing, I think I would watch it. But no, we need to stop saying we're going to make something based off historical event if we're not going to actually base it on the historical event.
Yeah, the argument I hear from people, it's a movie, it's supposed to be fantasy. No, it's literally not fantasy. It's the opposite of fantasy. It's a movie based on a real historical event with real historical people claiming to tell the story of William of Normandy and his conquest of England. And what modern people don't understand, in part because clothing has degraded so much in the West, especially, actually in any place that's kind of been westernized, is that fashion historically wasn't just a question of how you looked. It played an integral part in that culture. It played an integral part in the way people interacted. The kind of clothing people wore signaled key aspects of who they were, what they were, the power they had to the people who are around them. And, what really frustrates me is when some key bit of fashion or the way someone wears their hair is the thing that triggers a love interest or a lust interest. When no, a woman would not have worn her hair that way. Wouldn't have happened. No, a man would not have had a beard like that in that era. It makes it even more frustratingly unbelievable. Now, obviously, if you don't know, if one doesn't have any familiarity with historical clothing or historical fashion, then obviously that's not going to be very bothersome. But I know that I was really frustrated when I finally started doing my own research and I learned that some of my favorite historical movies had no bearing or connection to actual historical clothing. I got really angry because I actually felt betrayed. I felt like I had been led to believe something that wasn't true at all. And I think the big problem is that for most people, their only exposure to history or to historical clothing or to historical food or to the way historical people looked is going to be through entertainment. It's going to be through movies. It's going to be these days, especially through TV shows or series like this one. So I think it's even more important that there is an attempt to actually accurately depict at least the silhouettes, right? I'm not suggesting that they should only use hand dyed, hand woven fabric for their clothing, not at all. But at least the shapes could be correct.
Like, as long as it looks okay, right? Like, it can't be that hard to just make it look at least.
Right, 10-foot rule, right? 10-foot rule. That's all I'm asking. Emma makes a great comment. She said, "King and Conqueror at least got the horses right." But that's only because they could only use Icelandic horses. Oh my God. So Emma, what Emma's saying is that they were accidentally authentic when it came to their choice of horses. That's fantastic. Oh my God. I get so tired of, and I think, another part of the problem is then people walk away from a series like King and Conqueror. Oh, I really like the way Queen Emma was dressed. I'm going to make that, and I'm going to wear it to this historical event. And then they show up at a historical event, and in some cases they're denied entry because they're wearing something that is neither completely modern clothing as an attendee should be wearing, nor they're wearing something authentic enough to actually enter as a reenactor. And I've actually heard of that happening, and people get offended and frustrated. But the reality is that, especially in places like the United Kingdom, where they have really strict standards about costumed participants, they're trying to depict a specific era. So the Battle of Hastings reenactment in England, if you show up at that gate, you are either in clothing that fits a very strict, limited standard of shape and color, or you're in completely modern things. If you're in some kind of Ren Fair, medieval market clothes, they won't let you in. And I've actually heard about people getting offended that they were turned away from events because of that. But that's kind of the consequence of just trusting the entertainment industry, sadly.
I
don't know, have you? Go on.
I find that whenever something, even if it says that it's based, anything if it even makes a claim that's anything to do with something historical, a lot of people seem to suddenly become experts on the topic. And it's no research. Oh no, who can you bother to do research? Just watch a show that's nothing right, and then you have it. Like, that's part of course, I do the Tudor period in England mostly. And honestly, I'm gonna blame it. Mostly the other Boleyn girl and the Tudors, I find, are my greatest. What's a good word to describe this? I despise
nemesis, pet peeves.
I despise those shows a lot, the movie and show, a lot, because for some reason people think once they've watched it that it must be accurate, although I don't think I've seen a single good piece of clothing come from that. And this is unrelated, right? I'm trying to say a topic, but don't even get me started on whatever they're putting on Anne Boleyn's head, because it's just terrible. And they have a new thing coming out soon called 1536, based off like a stage play, I'm pretty sure. And I think the description that you see on Facebook was like, something about fall Anne Boleyn and working class women in the future, and like, it's just no. And the promo, they're all dressed as Anne Boleyn, and it's just like, I'm scared to see what's going to happen.
What was that movie? Hamnet. Hamnet made some equally egregious fashion choices recently. You saw the stills from Hamnet, didn't you? Did we talk about? Yeah, we talked about Hamnet. Oh my God. I thought first off, again, if you hadn't told me that this was about William Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway, his wife, who's also named Agnes, so there's some interesting debate about what her actual first name was. I would never have thought this is about Shakespeare and Anne Hathaway. I would have thought this is a fantasy production set in, kind of like The Princess Bride. Like, that's what I would have thought, based on the fact that he's wearing these like sloppy thigh-high riding boots all the time, and this blue-gray shirt with, no sleeves on his doublet, and he's always wearing this rough-shod-looking jerkin. She's always wandering around like she just ransacked the local high school Renaissance fair's costume closet and just picked out a bunch of things that were red, and doesn't know how to use a comb. And it was so frustrating because they tried to depict her as this forest witch, like that's going to be an acceptable thing to be in the second half of 16th century England. And they talk about how she doesn't go to mass. And I'm like, if she doesn't go to mass, she's going to get fined, and she's eventually going to get brought up on charges of witchcraft, because that is the witch craze. You don't you don't you do not dress differently as a practitioner of magic of that kind of magic in 16th century England. You blend hard. You do everything you can to convince the outside, everyone else, that you are a good Anglican, right? But instead they went with this whole modern take on her being different and being proud of her nonconformity. Like, no, nonconformity for a woman at the end of the 16th century could equal a painful, painful death.
Yeah.
So that frustrated the hell out of me. Just, and completely breaking with with key core tenets of 16th century English society. Again, why pick these historical characters? Just tell a fantasy story. You don't need to twist and contort these historical people's lives this way.
I feel like Anne Askew might be a good example of, you kind of want to blend in if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, especially as a woman. Anne Askew is an example of that.
Yep. You definitely, the Reformation, it makes it a very scary time to be women. It's funny. So many people think it's the Middle Ages when all the witch trials were. It's the Middle Ages when women are the most oppressed. It is not. It gets worse with the Reformation, and it continues to get worse until the 20th century. So, this idea that a woman in that era is going to be anything but the best, most English woman she can be. Especially not in an era when they were terrified about Catholic spies and there was all kinds of intrigue happening. You just don't want to be singled out in any way. Very frustrating. I suspect that I'm missing comments, so I'm just going to see about that, because my live stream has stopped showing comments. I don't know. I have no comments. The last comment I saw, everyone, was from Emma that King and Conqueror got the horses right. So, Mason, have I missed any comments that we should be responding to?
Let's check now, actually.
Yeah, unfortunately, for whatever reason, my live stream chat has just decided to not show things. So, but welcome, everyone. If you are here, welcome to Frock Flicks Chat, a session in which Mason from King Henry's Royal Court